All yours, Chair.
Lovely, thanks, Gareth. Well, welcome everyone to this meeting of the Education and Skills Corporate Delivery Committee on Wednesday, the 22nd of June. Absolutely stunning weather. I'm at home in my study for this meeting, but from now on I hope to be able to make the meeting in person in the Gloucester room. So before we crack on with the agenda, can I welcome the members of the committee? Thank you all for your support in asking me to be the chair. I'm conscious as ever that we should make sure we all know who's in the room, and of course we've got two rooms. We've got a virtual room and we've got an actual room in the Gloucester room there. So can I in that light, and mindful that we've got, I think, one new councillor, Councillor Sandra Joy, and we have new committee members here, existing councillors from P4 who are now committee members here. Could we just do a quick introduction, just to say your name and what ward you represent, please, so we can help Sandra and anyone else who might not know to put faces to names. Is that okay? So my name is Councillor Mike Dirk. I represent the Cocket ward and I'm the chair of the committee. Can I ask you to go around the room first, Gareth? Is that okay? Can you control that for me? I think it's you next and then on.
Yeah, certainly, Chair. Gareth Bosden from Democratic Services.
Hi, John Curtis, Cover Penrell Ward and Gosainon. Hi.
Lyndon Jones, Bishopston Ward.
And I'm Sandra Joy, the new councillor, Uplands Ward.
Hello, Sandra.
Hi.
Steve Holland from Legal Services.
Is that the room, Gareth? Yeah?
Yeah, that's all I say here, Chair.
Fiona?
Hi, Fiona Gordon, councillor for Castlewood.
Mike?
I'm Mike White, the councillor for Landor Ward.
Robert?
Robert Smith, Cabinet Member for Education.
Sam?
Sam Pritchard, councillor for Mynydd Bark and vice chair of the committee.
I'm not sure if photos changed on my screen then. Mike?
Yeah, Mike White, Landor Ward.
There we are, lovely, thank you. And then we got, I think, Caroline.
Caroline's my colleague in DS who's streaming the meeting, Chair, so she can't contribute.
Well, not last but least, Helen, and then Cabinet Member Robert Smith, please.
Helen Morgan-Rees, Director of Education.
We've had Robert as well.
Oh, we've had Robert. Right, there we are. This is moving around. I don't like that. Okay, so there we go. Thank you all very much. We move on to the agenda now. First off, can we have apologies for absence, please?
Ever apologies from Councillor Bev Hopkins, Chair.
Lovely, thank you. I've had none myself. So move on to agenda item number 2, disclosures of personal and prejudicial interests. From my point of view, I always, given the context of this meeting, refer to my substantive role. I work for the University of Wales Trinity St David, and there are close links with the local authority and the university. So I'd like to mention that for completeness. Do we have any other disclosures? No? Okay, thank you very much. So we move on to agenda item number 3, and that's to approve and sign the minutes of the previous meeting. So can I go through for accuracy, please, so we can confirm that they are a correct record? Page number 1, page number 2, page number 3, and page number 4. Are we content that we sign the meeting as a true record? Yes, thank you, Lyndon. Second?
Yep, me, Mike.
Lovely, thank you very much, Jan. So agenda item number 4. Now, this is a very... Hello? Oh, I had a bit of feedback then. Is anyone talking? Sorry? No.
No, nobody, Chair.
Lovely, thank you, Gareth. So agenda item number 4 is a very important agenda item for us to consider. We need to be very clear about the nature of our corporate delivery committee. So can I ask for officer input, please, to talk us through some of the key points of the CDC, our aim and purpose, and particularly how we are distinct from the scrutiny function chaired by our colleague, Councillor Jones.
Chair, they're mainly for information. Members will exactly what was in the report to the annual council, so they just come into each committee for information.
just for information.
Yeah.
Can I, is it acceptable for me, Gav, just to draw reference to one or two key points?
Yes, of course, Chair.
Just to clarify, I've had a number of queries about CDC versus scrutiny and how they relate to one another. So I think it's very important that we note there the purpose is for this CDC as a committee of council to deliver the council's corporate priorities for consideration and adoption by Cabinet and or Council as appropriate. So this is a whole council approach. This is Swansea Council as a whole in its function in the education and skills context. The chairs of CDCs will meet to coordinate agendas. So that's something we will do collectively as we have done previously. And I will be, when we come to the agenda item, be using Helen Morgan-Rees's insight and wisdom in the context of having organic agenda items to make sure that we are fluid in our approach and not set in stone, so we don't go through the year too mechanically, if you like. So our focus has to be shared by the relevant Cabinet member. I'm delighted that Councillor Robert Smith is here today in his important role. Our focus will be about future policy development with reference to the corporate plan. The last thing I would like to draw reference to in this context is this idea of taking a team Swansea approach. So partnership, working and collaboration is right in the DNA of the CDC approach. And when we come to the scrutiny function in section C of this note, then we need to bear in mind the scrutiny is all about holding to account, questioning and challenging proposed decisions, monitoring the performance of services and tackling issues of concern through inquiries and one-off meetings. Our focus is on the future development, policy, corporate delivery and looking ahead. But there is a very important link between us and scrutiny. We are one, if you like, one team. We should be stepping together as we aim to bring about improvements to education and skills in Swansea. Can I ask Councillor Robert Smith? Robert, would you like to add anything in that context?
I think Helen had a hand up before me, Chair, but I think you've summed it up very well there. As previous members will know, I mean, what we're looking for here, once the corporate priorities, the corporate plan have been agreed and signed off, we'll need to have a plan of work for the corporate development for these committees. And as you say, the focus needs to be on developing policy, on moving forward, not a scrutiny role, important though that is. But we can certainly draw on scrutiny reports as we've done before, drawn on other committees' reports to see where they've reviewed the work we do. But this is about taking things forward and moving Swansea forward in the next 5 years. And I think there's some exciting opportunities for us to do so, and I look forward to working with the committee, Chair.
Lovely, thank you, Robert. Helen?
Thanks, Chair. Just to echo the Cabinet members' comments there, there is an expected output from this committee, which is a draft policy. So very, very distinct between scrutiny and CDC is absolutely important. We make that distinction. And in addition, terms of reference, a process flow chart will be available to committee members, and indeed training around the new look CDCs, really. I think that's in the offing as well for September. But in terms of the corporate priorities, obviously, we are still waiting in terms of publicising our 22-23 corporate plan. We obviously have policy commitments that will go to council in July. So we also have an Estin inspection next week, so maybe some priorities could be drawn or considered from there. But in terms of being organic, I sit on an informal group that has looked at CDCs, and the meeting was actually at 12 o'clock today. But I think it's really important that I reflect on some of the issues raised in that meeting. And one of them was that we should begin our work plan with 1 or 2 topics rather than go off into too many areas, to try and focus on 1 or 2 topics when we're planning our work for the next few months, and to consider really the alignment with resources. So when we decide on those one or two topics, or what the committee decides, not me, when the committee decides on the topics, that there is an alignment with not just the corporate priorities, but the resources available. There's, both the human and financial resources available to deliver on that policy. So the intentions at the start of the work plan must be pretty clear, so that there's a clear output at the end, which is a draft policy that will go to the cabinet at the end of the municipal year. I hope that's helpful.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Helen. I think it's fair to say that that was hot off the press, wasn't it? It's a moving feast, isn't it? And I think what's interesting in my experience of this PDC and education scrutiny is that as Robert Councillor Smith said, is a through flow. I think I made comments in a scrutiny meeting that was picked up that led to the PDC focus then as we went forward. And I think that's the spirit of very good practice, really. Councillor Smith?
Yeah, just to give an illustrative example, it came to me as Helen was speaking there, and I think it was a scrutiny committee report prior to 2017. The heat is getting onto me now. I think I nearly said 1917, didn't I? It wasn't 1917, it was 2017, prior to that, to the May election there, that identified that there was there were a number of partnerships working across Swansea delivering education and training, and that there was a need to bring those partners together and nurture a common awareness. And I think that led to this committee's work on creating an entity, for a Swansea-wide entity, and that led to eventually to the establishment of the Swansea Skills Partnership, which is still going and is, I would say, Helen, fulfilling an important role here in Swansea in coordinating and developing our local provision alongside the Regional Skills Partnership. So that's an illustrative example, as I said, from 2017, not 1917.
Yeah, can I agree with you, Cabinet Member? It was very much a definitive course of action that has helped inform decision making. So what happened in 2017 has actually helped us with current thinking at that time, and has helped us inform future decisions. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, both. Can I just ask I know this is for information, Gareth is frowning at me because I paused on this agenda item, but I think it's very important when we go on a journey to know where we're heading and what the purpose is as best we can. So can I ask whether there's any comments or any insights from the committee on the terms of reference? Are we quite clear about the focus of the CDC? Councillor Jones, Lyndon?
Great, thank you, Chair. Yeah, to go back to the Skills Partnership, I was obviously a member of this committee when that was when we put that together. But likewise, the scrutiny body looked at the Skills Partnership and and made suggestions on how it could be developed and changed, and improved. And I think we've met them over a course of about 5 years twice. So that is a way that sort of follows through.
Excellent. Thank you, Lyndon. And one thing for me, I can't see any other hands up. If anybody else wants to make a comment in the room, will you let me know, Gareth, please? One thing for me is that we've always worked with a very high level of goodwill, trust and respect as scrutiny and PDC and now CDC. And I think that's why we managed to maintain that momentum. And that's very important that we continue in that vein, I think. So we can move on now to the next agenda item, which is education, which is agenda item number 5. And that is the draft report of the Education Skills Policy Development Committee supporting the challenges for learners in recovering from the pandemic. So this has been sent out in advance, so I hope we've all had a chance to read through it. It covers a huge, I think fair to say, amount of work at an incredibly difficult time for everyone. And of course, an incredibly difficult time for everyone involved with education and skills, not least our 90+ schools. And we were supported brilliantly, I think, by council officers and others. And we looked at an awful lot of information, and we've come to this draft report in front of us with a series of 10 recommendations. So can I open this up, please, for any comments, any perspectives Helen, would you like to offer a comment on the report and its aim, its content?
I think it draws upon the 8 meetings of the PDC from the last municipal year, and you can see there's quite a range there. There's quite a spectrum really of topics that were considered under the umbrella of vulnerable learners. And I think that was the starting point. We started with our concerns really about the pandemic and the emerging themes from the pandemic and what could be done to support vulnerable learners here in Swansea. So there were very different kind of conceptual ideas that we explored, and indeed had heard evidence about those over the course of the 8 meetings. So there's very much a range of recommendations there. There's no clear single policy, but that said, I think you could badge it under the umbrella of vulnerable learners. Really, all of those things would support youngsters, learners who are vulnerable in Swansea. So I'm very much of the mind that I performed quite a secretarial function really in drawing the report together for the committee, because really the committee has already considered some of these issues, nearly all of them, including how we look at communities in terms of learning champions. That was a key consideration of the committee and one of our starting points. So it's not for me to say that these recommendations are the right ones. I think it's for the committee to decide, and it's very reflective of those 8 meetings held in the last municipal year.
Thank you, Helen. And can I echo that? I think we saw some brilliant engagement with all committee members, strong insights born of experience as councillors, but also from a wide range of professional experience over an awful long time as well. And they were challenging, they were sometimes surprising, and I think we all learned an awful lot. I know at one point Helen was pulling faces at me all the time because she said, Mike, I'm going to have to pull this report together at some point. But it was necessarily, I think it's fair to say, committee broad-ranging, because vulnerability is so complex, I think. And that's one of the challenges we will continue to have to grapple with, I think. I've got a hand up there. Can I go to Councillor Mike White, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, very, very interesting reading the report. And it was on page 12 in the bullet points of comprehensive schools having the EWO. Because it is important, especially coming out of the pandemic as well, with attendance. And I think if we could, I know, as been already said, it's down to resources, but I think that would help support our comprehensive schools as well by having that sort of contact there to work, with the education welfare officers to try and encourage the children back into school, and obviously to perhaps give support or signpost families perhaps to get support as well. I think that's a very, very important point that of that going forward, and also the use of our local libraries within communities. I know we're lucky within my ward, we have Brynham Library, and I know that quite a lot of the primary schools make full advantage of that facility, and it also helps as well because it draws the parents into going to the libraries as well, and other family members. And I think that is very, very important that we sort of tackle this from the early stages for children when they start out on their road to education.
Lovely, thank you, Mike. Very interesting. And I think that some of the recommendations actually touch on the power and importance of existing provision that we've got and improving accessibility. One of my earliest memories was being given a library card for the first time at Forest Park Library. I remember silent signs, the silent signs. I remember being scared to death of the librarian because he couldn't breathe in there. But it's one of my earliest memories. And that was my lifelong love of reading came from being 4 and being given a blinking library card. It's lovely. Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think, looking at the recommendations in this report, I think there's a lot for us as an administration to take forward that will be valuable in all 8 recommendations. what we have to recognise is that we are, as the committee has recognised itself, we're in a very different situation now to what we were pre-pandemic. There's been an immense amount of work done to try and narrow the gap and close the gap and reduce the impact of poverty on educational attainment, and that's been a strong theme of this committee's work since it was established. My fear is that the experiences of lockdown, 2 years of educational disruption is going to have a severe impact on that progress, and that we're now almost having to start from the beginning again. And I think some of these recommendations are going to help with that. There's some practical steps there, reviewing the use of free school meals. That's always been a kind of blunt instrument, and my feeling, and I think I said to the committee at the time, was it was used because of in the absence of anything better, to be honest. But with the rollout of universal free school meals, that is going to affect whether we measure eligibility as opposed to take up. I mean, how that's done, that's going to be a national issue. But I think it's certainly worth us reviewing it. The use of community assets, and that's a strong theme across all of the recommendations there, is harnessing the capacity that exists within the communities, whether it's existing services, whether it's individuals, or whether it's social capital, to support this agenda. Again, I think is something that we can take forward and is going to be a strong plank for us as an administration in Swansea. So I welcome the report and thank you for the recommendations.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, Robert. One of there was so much last year. It was
Chair, Councillor. Sorry, Chair. Councillor Joy's got a hand up in the room.
Hi, sorry.
Sorry, I couldn't see. Go on.
My question is, how is this disseminated to or shared with schools? And what is the expectation on each school based on this report?
Helen, would you like to pick up?
Thank you. So in terms of the report itself, obviously there are implications for schools and there are resource implications for schools, resource implications for officers, and these are just commitments at this stage. The deliverability of these plans in themselves is not guaranteed because they are resource dependent, but they are at this stage clear objectives in terms of where we would want to improve provision and examine further provision and to collate more information really that will help inform future planning. But in terms of the resources available to us, I mean, we have a range of officers working in the Education Directorate. We don't have many officers who have got time to undertake all of the types of work described here, but certainly we can try and furnish these objectives to the best of our ability, but they're very much resource dependent, and whether they are delivered in a year's time, 3 years' time or 5 years' time is something that needs to be considered carefully as well.
Thank you, Helen. Robert?
Yeah, I'd echo that. And I mean, I think this report is more for the Cabinet, and if the Cabinet agreed, endorsed the report, it's to change the way and inform the way that the Education Directorate would work centrally. And then any changes would then be communicated to schools via our officers. It could change the practice in terms of the way our officers work with schools, or change some of the practices that the way the schools are working. But I mean, I think that's one step further away from this actual report. Although, of course, they're welcome to see the report for information and inform their deliberations.
I was telling myself I was on mute then. Can I say, Councillor Joy, that these are live meetings, so these meetings can be accessed by people. They're all recorded, they're shared publicly on the council website. So I have had a few of my teacher friends coming on to me and asking me questions and thinking, gosh, were you in the meeting? Well, because I forgot that they'd actually access some of the information online. One of them actually referred to the report from David Jones, the Council Sport and Health Manager, referring to the summer programme and the impact the summer programme had on the child's home life. So this is fun and sport and activity, and the parents reported better communication, settled home environment because the kids are happier, which is just wild, isn't it? You know, I thought, oh, that's interesting. Wouldn't have seen that knock-on effect. Helen has a hand up.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm trying to pivot between the document and my microphone. They seem far apart, although I'm only on my laptop. So in essence, when you look across the 10 recommendations, I think it's important to point out, Councillor Joy, that some of these actions are already in train and they're not completely innovative and new in thinking. They are actions or recommendations that have already begun but need to develop further, and based on the evidence heard by this committee, I think it was almost a commitment really to get some of these activities over the line. An example of that would be recommendation 6. So you look at the council exploring becoming an adverse childhood experience informed council. Well, some of the work in that area has been ongoing for the last 4 years, but it's just about recognising the status and importance of that work more publicly. So again, some of the work around the exclusions, recommendation 10, in terms of our exclusions reduction strategy. A lot of that is existing already. It needs to be pulled together into a clear strategy that's published. So a lot of this, I hope that gives you some assurance that a lot of this work has started already.
Chair.
Councillor Jones.
Okay. Can I say that obviously reading this, one of the important roles is to see that vulnerable learners get the very best. And I think that is embedded in the report, which is very important. One piece of work that had a huge impact on me was outdoor learning. And when we did that session, I can't forget it. I think it was so important, not just for the pupils, but for the teachers as well. And I think that really had a huge impact on me personally.
Do you know, I'd agree with that absolutely wholeheartedly. And the head teacher of Croyce, Mr. Sayre, said that the little boy went to school after having terrible dentistry work done, and he insisted on going to school later that day because today was outdoor learning day. Wonderful. He loved it so much. It's powerful. And as a very experienced professional, Mr. Sayre actually gave us the phrase, "Happy children learn." And that stayed with me from that session. Thank you, Lyndon. Okay, so is that okay, Councillor Joy? Did that answer your question? Did that help?
Yes, thank you.
Good, lovely. Thank you very much. So do we have any other comments, any other insights? I can't see any hands up virtually. So we can move on then. We are content with agenda item number 5. And before I move on, I've made a comment on the paper here that I can't find now. But I think the one, a few of my colleagues won't forgive me if I allow to move on from number 5 without mentioning the power and importance of vocational education. And this has been a consistent feature of the committee over time, and it's great to see it listed there as a strong recommendation, because by the time you get to 12 or 13, if you're not interested in pi or algebra or Shakespeare, but you like the outdoors and you want to roll your sleeves up and do something more technical or practical, well, perhaps the opportunities need to be stronger. And I think that encapsulates the ethos there. Again, as Helen says, work underway, progress is being made, but the idea is to ramp it up and take it forward with energy and dynamism where resources allow, of course.
Chair, we just need to approve the recommendations. If the committee approve or endorse, so if you can have a mover and a seconder, that'll be great. Then.
Thank you for that nudge, Gareth. So committee members, can I have a mover, please?
I'll move it, please, Mike.
Thank you, Jan, and a seconder.
Aye, I'll move that, Mike. Yep.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. So moving on to agenda item number 6 that we've kind of touched upon previously in the meeting so far. The way things work is that we set the agenda. The papers go out 2 weeks in advance. Gareth, I think is 2 weeks. We have
A week normally, Chair.
a week normally, and they're all very structured. They're available online, and we are always concerned to ensure that we are clear about what's coming down the line, what's coming next, bearing in mind Helen's point about her meeting today about looking at the work plan. So for the July meeting, to get things moving forward, then do we focus on a perspective from the directorate, because it's a moving feast, lots of information is being discussed, there's lots of meetings, there's lots of information at a corporate level. So do we for July then concentrate on insight from Helen and her team, and to look at what are our priorities as a council, but also to have, if I can ask for this, I hope it's okay, some basic information about the shape of the estate, the number of schools, how many staff, and all the basic information that is available. But it would be nice to start our meeting, our year properly in July, if you like, the series of meetings with that kind of baseline information. This is Swansea Education, and move on from there. How does that sound for the July meeting? I can see Fiona nodding, Mike nodding. Any comments? Anybody want to?
All good, Mike, thanks.
Lovely, thank you very much. Is that okay, Cabinet Member Robert Smith? Yes?
Yes, definitely. Endorse that.
Lovely, thank you. And Helen, please.
Yes, Chair, just to say we have a new link officer from Education, Sarah Hughes. I think Sarah's joined us for the first time ever today.
Sarah
Yes, she
Hughes,
is
hello,
with us.
Sarah.
Yeah. So Sarah's got a key responsibility in the Education Directorate, looking at education strategies and policies, how we evaluate ourselves, how we plan. So I think it's very important that Sarah is part of this committee as we move forward together.
But I think Sarah's going to be my new best friend.
That's fine.
Nice to welcome Sarah. Thank you very much. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, committee members. So we're moving on, and if I haven't got it wrong, we are now up to agenda item number 7. And agenda item number 7 is the date and time of our meetings. So we are proposing to keep the meetings on a Wednesday at 4 o'clock. This is probably the most contentious aspect of my role as a councillor, in my time as a councillor in the last 5 years, because you never get the right meeting for everybody. We have work commitments, family commitments, all sorts of everything going on. But I think it worked really well for us in the last year, 4 o'clock on a Wednesday. So can I propose that we keep the meetings to 4 p.m. on a Wednesday, and set that? Is that okay? Yes, everyone's nodding, thankfully. Thumbs and everything.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine, Chair.
Okay. That's great. So the next meeting is on Wednesday, the 27th of July at 4 o'clock. And on that point, can I thank you all very much for your attendance, and close the meeting there. Thank you.